Thank you, Sarah, for that reading. So Pride in the Margins. This is the last of our series of Pride sermons, which we traditionally do across the Pride period. And I've looked at whose voices are too quiet, whose voices are ignored or denied, and what would Jesus have done? So my pondering for this sermon came from three places. A sense from Facebook over the last week that not all people felt that Pride included them. They were trans, they were bi, they were poly, straight, asexual, etc. There were also many calls to boycott the new Stonewall film because it switched the lead in the trailers, at least, to a cis white gay man rather than the African American trans woman who did in fact throw the first stone. And also the reading that we've just heard, which talks of following Jesus as children do, amongst other things. Some of you who know me well know that I have three nieces. They are 2.5, nearly 5, and 7 1/4, and those quarters and halves are vitally important, at least to them. The older two are now at school, and as part of this they've learnt song and dance routines, which they love to show us as the relatives afterwards, sometimes more than once. Aren't we blessed? It is a very blessing moment. And their sister, at 2.5, tries very hard to copy the arm movements, the twirls and the words during the performance. Always, of course, half a step behind and an echo on the choruses, normally on the last word. It's a very cute moment, but it's not just about it being cute. It shows us that she wants desperately to join in. She wants to learn, and she's learning by copying. We'll move over here. It's a real blessing and a privilege to watch her grow up and to watch her learn by copying her two sisters. And if you've ever had the privilege of watching siblings grow up, you'll have seen something similar. Only children learn the same way, but they learn by copying their parents, their friends and other relatives. How many of us have seen a young child try out a new word to the shock, amusement and sometimes accusing looks of the adults around as they try and figure out where the word came from, as well as whether it's being used right? Many times in Jesus' ministry, he talked about us coming to God as children, without prejudice and without preconception. And when we watch children closely, you can really understand what that means, but also that actually that period without prejudice and preconception is very, very short. By copying those around them and absorbing the words that are used, children learn without question the prejudices, thoughts and assumptions of their families and friends. Yesterday I had two quite interesting conversations with my nieces. They're at that stage where everything is a question. The first from the eldest, who at 7 came with an RE question. If God made words, how did we learn them? I won't go into how we tied ourselves in knots trying to answer this question. But it's a very interesting concept that she has absorbed, that God made words. She means language, but that God made language. It doesn't question in her mind that that's the reality. We have words, therefore God made them. But how? The middle one, later in a conversation about countries being on the earth, asked if the world was on the earth. Because she hasn't yet learnt that there is a limit to how things are. So she has ideas that places may be not just on the earth. And maybe in her lifetime it will be true, that we will visit places that are not on the earth. But for the moment, our world is the same as the earth. But I treasure those moments of openness and hope they'll continue for some time, although I see them already beginning to fade. We absorb those concepts, those assumptions, and at some point in our childhood, our view of what is normal becomes pretty firm. If we're lucky, our family and our schooling help to keep that idea of normal fairly wide, and we'll enter adolescence with an open view. But if not, the chances are that our friends look like us, think like us, and we're already conforming to the stereotypes given to us. If we don't fit in, if that's not who we are, then school can become a nightmare of bullying, denial of ourselves, hiding, feeling excluded and unwelcome. As we leave school, we seek to break away from this. We enter college or university or the world of work. We try again to fit in with colleagues while finding a family of choice, friends like us to support us. We again subscribe to stereotypes in order to feel safe and fit in. So if you're wondering how this fits in with either the reading or Pride, do bear with me. The past year has been a tumultuous one for human rights around the world, and many, many eyes have been opened as the small voices who've been calling from the desert for many years are getting loud enough to hear. Equal marriage is now the law in Ireland and the USA, and the first same-sex marriages have been recognised in the UK. But we've also had fatalities at prides in other countries because of the violence against people for who they love. Trans Pride in Brighton was bigger and more visible than ever. But trans pride are still being killed, trans people are still being killed even in the liberal Western world. The Black Lives Matter movement has grown as police brutality is put under the spotlight, and white supremacist attacks on churches occur with alarming frequency. It's not changed, that narrative. MCC churches in America have been attacked, threats of violence and homophobic graffiti. It's easy for us to say from the UK that that's a US problem, it wouldn't happen here. But look at our newspaper headlines about immigration, racial profiling on crimes, and even TV characters where we still show those stereotypes of who people are and how they live. Pride last week was a wonderful celebration of our ability to live free and openly in this country, no matter who we are. And for the most part, everyone's rights are respected. I'm told, because I couldn't be there, it was a family event. Funnily enough, your parents only have a 40th wedding anniversary once, and they want you there. But the parade was a great success. I'm told that there were around 150,000 people along the route. That's almost half the population of the city of Brighton and Hove. It's a huge number of people. The park was full, maybe a bit too full, as was the street party. I'm sure it suffered the same problem. The pubs and the clubs all did very well, and I'm sure some hotels were full and benefited. The women's performance area in memory of Sheila McWatty was loved by many. And there are many great reviews and comments, but there are a few small voices saying, where are we? Where is our space? This isn't safe for us. So I invite you to look with new eyes. Pride has always been very welcoming of this church. Historically, this church has been largely a white middle-class group of lesbians and gay men with the odd straight person thrown in. But that's not who we are now. And for some of us, and for some of our friends, Pride wasn't so great. The shorthand of gay pride and gay Christmas that comes up on news feeds and indeed on the front covers of magazines doesn't work so well for the BTQIA plus whatever of the LGBT plus community. It continues to stereotype that pride is all about gay men. Gendered toilets may make women feel safe, but it doesn't work for non-binary, some trans folk, and of course it increases the queue for the ladies. Yeah, we can hope. The picture posted on Facebook of a sign for trans showers separate from men and women's showers in the Pride campsite doesn't help our trans siblings feel welcome and equal, but it was there. Even saying trans brothers and sisters doesn't reflect or include everyone within the wide diversity of the trans community. The disabled person attending with their two partners as carers, who was challenged because they could only have one partner or carer, denies the possibility that you can be queer or LGBT without being single or in a couple. There are many ways to be a family or in a relationship, both inside the LGBT community and outside it. I believe that Jesus was at Pride. I believe that God walked in the parade with the churches, the ambassadors, the drag queens, the choirs, the pubs and the clubs and everyone else. I believe that God was in the crowd, next to the old and the young, next to the straight, the queer and the unsure. I believe that God was at the street party and in the park, looking after those who were vulnerable and those who were happy. I believe that Jesus was with each person watching as they were included, and with those who were hurting as they were not. I'm sure there are many, many more examples of both good and bad things that happened at Pride. But we need to start looking harder at how we include everyone when we set up big events. Is our advertising and press only showing young white men dancing? Do we promote marriage so much that we deny the existence of alternatives, or simply the desire from some people to be together but not marry? Do we talk only about sexuality and forget the other dominant privileges, race, gender and age? Andrew and I went to lunch a couple of weeks ago with two friends of ours, and the waiter always deferred to Andrew. Would he like the wine list? Would he like the bill, sir? The waiter doesn't know that that might not be how it works, but it's still the dominant story. I went to dinner in America when I was over there for a governing board meeting of a denomination, and we were splitting the bill, but only 3 arrived because the waitress made the assumption that I was with the gentleman and that he would pay my bill. It doesn't work that way, but those are the assumptions that are endemic in our society. So back to the passage, because it's not all about pride. Paul wrote his letter to the Ephesians because they weren't perfect. He didn't write because he was perfect, but because he recognised a need to remind them that they were followers of Christ, and that meant that they would change. Not that they would suddenly become perfect, or start complying with the Jewish moral code that he had been brought up with, but because as children in a new relationship with God, they would follow Jesus' example. They should copy him, and in doing so would forgive more easily, more quickly and more completely. They would speak the truth, be generous, and love those around them. He asked them to forget the stereotypes and preconceptions they had been taught by the society that they had grown up in, and adopt new behaviours more like Jesus. I think that this part of the letter challenges us to be better people, to find ways to speak the truth, to love and include each other equally, to challenge the ideas and stereotypes we've grown up with, to not let our anger fester. It's not an easy one. It's not. We've all experienced hurt at the hands of someone else. We've all heard of other people who've been hurt because of prejudice. And to some extent, we fear that that same thing will happen to us. And Paul says it doesn't have to be this way. We can become a megaphone for other people's voices. We don't have to speak for them in order to stand with them. Everyone has their own voice and their own experience to share. But we can help those voices be heard. We can help tell the truth. We can share, we can retweet, we can like things on Facebook. So our networks hear someone else's story. My adopted godmother, she'd probably find that a funny description, but I didn't know her until I was already a teenager and I was baptised when I was 5 months old, so, you know. But she says that's why she tweets, that's why she's on Facebook, so that her network can get to find out things that are in the fringes of her network, so other people see, and that's how she can support. Really spoke to me for a moment there. We can let go of the anger and that hurt and live in the now. Maybe our present is not like the past we had or the past that our families had. We can ask people to listen and help open doors for others to be heard. We can love people on both sides of an argument or a debate. That's not an easy thing to do, but it is possible with God's help. We can forgive the wrongs, the mistakes and the hurt, and trust that others did not intend to hurt us, even if the action was deliberate. We can remember that sometimes hurt is caused by our well-intentioned attempt to include. We can apologise and forgive when it happens to us. We can speak the truth as we know it. We will never know the whole truth, but we can speak the truth. I am really proud to be a part of a church where we follow Jesus and are open to all, regardless of where on the faith, sexuality, gender, colour, age, etc. spectrum we all sit. I asked that tonight, in fact I had to do some of it myself, but I wasn't very good at it, that we put the pride flags up again. We have quite an array to reflect the alphabet of the pride flags as we know them. But if there's one that we're missing, let us know. We haven't got it perfect yet either. Amen.